Mike, you've been doing a radio show for 7 years.
Right.
I've been doing one for 20 years. But we are mere children in our radio shows compared to this next person.
Oh, yeah.
We'd like to welcome up Mr. Rich Conaty from the Big Broadcasts.
The true man, the myth, the legend. You all know him and listen to him every Sunday evening from 8 to midnight. Hi, Rich.
I'm the host of the Big Broadcast that didn't die over the weekend.
Why, was there some outage or something?
There was a Washington, D.C. Big Broadcast guy that croaked.
Oof. Really? Who was that?
Well, let's not start.
It's not about him, man.
Okay. Well, it's a mystery to me.
But it saves me from suing him for using the name.
Yeah, there you go. It's all yours, free and clear now.
Well, maybe the estate I could go after.
Does he have good records?
No, he's an old-time radio dude.
Okay.
So if I want, if I'm hurting for Green Hornet, I know where to go.
All right. Or The Shadow.
Yeah.
Any of that stuff. Well, so Rich, how long have you been doing your show?
It'll be 43 years in January.
43 years of radio. He's like the big daddy. I'm like the little daddy. And you're like...
I'm like the forgotten stepchild.
Yeah, you're like Gummo.
I'm Gummo.
You're like Gummo.
I'm not even Zeppo. I didn't even make it into the first 5.
But, I remember hearing your show way back then.
Yeah.
And, it was sort
I'm not the original one. Every few years they put us out to stud. It's like Lassie.
They bring in a new model. Understood. I think they're working. FMU's working on that for me also, and it's about to happen. But I've always been inspired by your work and thought, is it possible to do an antique music show that people will listen to? And then I, was like, okay, well, this guy's been on for, at that point it was 20 years. I'm like, people are interested in it. It's a great show. So it sort of gave me the inspiration as part of my listening and growing experience to say, let's just go for it and do it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
And I used to listen and still do to Rich's show and record it on cassette tapes when I started listening to you. And I still have all the cassette tapes. And it was, a big buildup. It's true.
I've got cassettes at home. I've got open reels. I used to record my show just to air check it on VHS.
Yeah.
I am so over-documented.
No such thing.
Yeah, I've got a lot of those too, and they just sitting there, and sometimes I wonder, what am I going to ever do with these?
Right.
Well, every once in a while, I'll listen to an old show, or sometimes because it's birthday. So as a birthday comes up, I'll go back to the show from a year ago or 5 years ago, and I'm always consoled by the fact that the show of a year or 5 years ago isn't nearly as good as the one I'm planning for the next Sunday. And that's, in part, it has less to do with me. I've sort of leveled off in the 70s, but the record collection has grown. So when I put a show together this coming Sunday night, I've got 7 birthday tributes, and I have more records to choose from this week than I had a year ago or 5 years ago or 40 years ago. So the show gets better because there's just an amazing amount of records out there that haven't been turned up yet.
And that's funny. That's something that people will always ask me to say, oh, you listen to the old music, but how many songs could there possibly be? I mean, and I always say, if I never heard it before, that's a new song to me. It doesn't matter how old it is. So you could constantly find new stuff that, you never heard before that was recorded. And great songs.
I never heard that Irving Kaufman that Ron played. I know it from a Billy Murray record. I don't know if did that have the Rin Tin Tin reference? I'm not sure. But I just bid over the weekend on a record auction. I must have bid on 100-some records, all of which are new to me. So it's a wonderful hobby, for the lonely.
Well, look, we're in a room full of people. We're not so lonely.
And it's a handsome crowd. It really is.
Oh, yeah.
Handsome crowd.
But, it brings up a good point that there's always, people say to me, where do you find these records? It's really hard to find.
Right.
At this point, I have to try to keep them away from coming into my apartment. Because people are always coming to me, we were just in my grandmother's attic and we've got 12,078s. They're all yours. Come get them.
You had the good fortune a couple weeks ago, that wonderful profile in the New York Times.
Oh, yes.
Great. There was an article about me, appropriately, in the AARP magazine. And
Play your audience.
I've seen that.
I've got the deceased plus demographic cover. But as a result of that article, and it was the biggest exposure that the show's ever gotten, I've gotten more phone calls, more emails, more offers of absolutely terrible records. Terrible.
They all want to give you red Columbia.
Oh, and Francis Craig Near You, and I mean,
I've
it's
got Enrico Caruso.
Right.
It's really old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
copies of White Christmas.
Right. Yeah.
Watch the Italians.
And people say to me, well, what do I do with them if you don't want them? I'm like, I don't know what to do.
Juggle them.
That's right, exactly.
Practice. If you break a few, who cares?
Right.
They don't even take them. Salvation Army won't even take them.
No. And like I said, at this point, I am very discerning about any 78s I let come into my home. But you're right. It's we're always finding really good stuff. Like, for example, there was a record I'd heard about that existed, and I found in the catalog called the OK Crying record.
Really?
It's like, we all know there's a lot of laughing records. There's this crying record. I heard about it. It literally took me 20 years to find a copy of it. And I finally did. And now I've got a burping record, sneezing record,
Coughing record.
coughing
I could make
record,
one for you, actually. One
all
coughing
those.
record.
I'm looking for a farting record.
There's a record that we're
I
using.
heard that one stinks.
That one's French.
Oh yes,
And it
the
stinks.
Petome.
It's a little new for your show, but there's a wonderful band from the 1930s, Don Redman's Orchestra, and he had this great singer, Harlan Lattimore. Sounded a lot like Bing, but just a great. And Harlan Lattimore made one solo record for Columbia in 1932. I'd never had it. A guy turned it up. We're going to put it on the next big broadcast CD. There's so much stuff, as we were saying, there's so much stuff that's out there, and the hunt never really ends.
No, it just keeps on happening, and that's what makes our shows, I think, interesting, and what keeps the hobby interesting. Mm-hmm. So good for us.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Here, here.
All right. Well, what record did you bring for us to play?
Well, I just plugged those of us on this end of the dial, we live from fundraiser to fundraiser.
True.
And for the last 11 years, I've worked with Brian Wright at Rivermont Records, a wonderful label. We put out big broadcast CDs, recordings that, for the most part, have never come out before on LP or on CD, including some live broadcast alternate takes. Anyhow, this is the first track from the first big broadcast CD from 11 years ago. It's Fletcher Henderson's band.
Oh, man.
In 1924 with a scat vocal from Don Redman, My Pappa Doesn't Two-Time, No Time.
Look how shiny that shellac is. Shiny, shiny. Oh, Fletcher Henderson, what a great New York band.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Player and band he put together.
And it's got to go. It's got Redman scat singing. Probably did the chart. It's the Henderson band, and it's a great Walter Donaldson song.
It's probably 24.
24, yeah.
Yeah. Let's hear it. All right.
about that tune? From 1924. The first track off the Big Broadcast Volume 1, right? Yeah.
Beautiful record.
Thank you very
Beautiful
much.
records. Rich, I just want to ask you, you've been doing this for so long, and you must have been collecting a bit before you started your radio show. And back then, it was a real arcane thing to be doing, to be collecting 78s. It was probably done by so few people. What got you into it?
Well, I kind of fell in love with the music and radio at the same time. When I was in high school, I heard this music on the air. I listened to Joe Franklin and Danny Stiles. There was a fellow named Ed Beach on WRVR, did a show called Just Jazz, and they would do profiles of different people. So I just said, I really want to be on the radio, and I want to collect records. And as an only child, this way I could share the records, but I wouldn't have to give them away to anybody. So,
I've got the same theory.
Yeah.
Only child syndrome.
But at the, the good thing for me was that I lucked into the show as a freshman at Fordham, and it was an hour-long show, Sunday nights, 11 to midnight, and I barely had an hour's worth of records. It was basically when a lot of LP reissues were around. And I didn't start collecting 78s until as the show expanded and I saw the need for more music. So I just lucked out in every possible way that as the show got longer, my collection increased and started getting into bidding on auctions and no looking back.
Right, because when I started getting into this 25 years ago or so, there's a very limited amount of stuff reissued on LP. So you have to be really limited in what you were getting if that was the way you were doing it until you started getting into the 78s, and then you really opened up your world. Yeah,
and typically like the show that I just recorded before I came over here today, about a third of the show, maybe 20 records out of 60-some records are from 78s, and it's because it's the only game in town. If I want to play Smith Ballou's record of You're All I Need from 1935, it's a 78 or it's nothing.
There you go. And that's what's great about, like we said before, about this hobby. Always new stuff coming out. You can always count on hearing new old stuff on your show, and that's what makes it great. And here's to another 20 years for you too, Rich.
How about it, folks? Rich
Thank
Conaty.
you. Thank you, Michael. Congratulations.
Thank you
Mac.
so much for coming, Rich.
One last question.
Yes.
Does that come in a Husky?
Probably. I could send you to a place in Harlem where you can go to get it.
Rich Conaty.
Cheers, cheers.